Hello, and welcome back to the NOTCAST. If this is the first time you ever watched one of these, welcome. The format, as if you've seen loads of these before, you'll already know, is I talk about a period of a band's career, an album, a tour, maybe the absence of an album, and kind of show off bits of my record collection, or bits of my CD and DVD collection, or anything else that comes to mind, really. Whilst talking about the band and that period in the band's history and the things that we know, and come out with obviously some wild convoluted conjecture, a smattering of opinion, and a small dose of honest fact. It's number 322, and it is the Thursday, the 5th of October 2023, and today I am talking about Guns N' Roses, and more correctly I'm talking about Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Democracy release, which came out in, and I think it was 2015, the live concert film and CD of the Chinese democracy era of the band. This period of the band was as frustrating as it was exciting to be a fan. And I have to go through a little bit of history to get you to the point where we talk about what's happening now and why it's both frustrating and not at the same time. So obviously, 15th of January 2001, the band were reborn of a sort with a new lineup, playing the Rock in Rio 3 festival in Rio de Janeiro, debuting several new songs, including, let me just quickly check, Madagascar, Chinese Democracy, The Blues, and Silkworms, which later turned into a track called Absurd, which you've probably heard. And new members, Robin Fink on guitar, Buckethead on guitar, Paul Hughes on guitar, Tommy Stinson from the aptly named Replacements on bass, Brain on drums, and Chris Mother Goose Pittman on keyboards, squelches, and other noises. This is a bootleg CD of the show. It was broadcast on television in Argentina, and this was a prize addition to my collection at the time when I was vastly invested in what the new Guns N' Roses were going to be like. I was listening to old classic Appetite and Illusion era Guns. I was really interested in the reality of the band and the ambition of the band in putting together a combination of what felt like sleazy, dirty but modern rock, and the operatic ambition of things like Elton John and Queen, and putting those all together into one smorgasbord of rock and effing roll, as they say. That said, by the time we got to 2008 and the release of Chinese Democracy, things were very different. Brain had left the group, Frank Ferrer was on drums, Richard Fortus was on guitar, Robin Fink had left, and he'd rejoined Nine Inch Nails. So the band had to start again to an extent with a new lineup. The release of Chinese Democracy, as mentioned in the previous episode, I felt was very much a squandering of an opportunity. Effectively, Guns turned into radio silence, as if somehow releasing Chinese Democracy was in itself enough. And then there was the Axl answering fans' questions and answers on forums and message boards to try and make up for the lack of activity. So, for example, there was due to be a video released for Better. That didn't come out. There was some talk about the band playing in America in February 2009. That didn't happen. Instead, it went very, very quiet. So imagine you release your first LP in 17 years, your follow-up to the multi-million selling Use Your Illusion, an ability to represent the band in the new lineup as this is still Guns N' Roses, go on television, play radio shows, do interviews, get in the press and print media, those type of things. None of that was happening. They just released the album, sold I think 1.5 million copies to Walmart, and then went very, very quiet indeed. And I was just kind of sat there going, if you want to launch your first LP in 17 years, and you want people to buy the LP, bearing in mind there's going to be some skepticism around, is it even worth buying anymore? Go on television, do like, 2 songs a night for 4 nights on Jimmy Fallon or something. Play a new song and an old song every night. You get to play 4 songs from Chinese Democracy, 4 songs from the band's back catalogue. And as Axel says at this very show here, they can play the fuck out of their songs. Unquote. That's our Uncle Axel's words, not mine. As I could prove to people that it was legitimately still a Guns N' Roses, because when everybody changes in a lineup, apart from the singer, the feeling that some people get is not the same band. And I talked about this previously in an episode way back. You think about the only consistent member of Napalm Death is nobody. Shane's been the longest standing member who joined halfway through side 2 of the second LP, for example. I think it's gone from enslavement to obliteration, but I could be wrong. And you end up going, well, who is the band? Is it the singer? Is it the drummer? Is it, I don't know, Joey Nobody's Rat? Whoever is in Rat these days, I have no idea. So if you're relaunching a band, new LP, and everyone but the singer has changed, you probably need to do the work. Go out there, really plug the LP, win over the skeptics. But it didn't happen. There was a huge amount of goodwill. I remember a huge amount of excitement, actually, on the day that Chinese Democracy was released. People were like, oh, I've got it, Chinese Democracy. It's real, it exists. What's it going to sound like? I'm so excited. And then you kind of figure, well, the next thing you do, go on television, advertise a tour, play some arena shows, play America in February 2009, go into arenas in Europe in summer 2009. But that didn't happen. Instead, there was nothing. And there was a US tour that was scheduled for February 2009, which did not happen. It wasn't announced. It was in the works, but the band's manager allegedly nixed that. And there was lots of preparation in April 2009 for a potential stadium headlining tour in America with the David Lee Roth version of Van Halen, the definitive Van Halen. According to some people, and apparently a double headliner, Van Halen and Guns N' Roses playing stadiums in America, summer 2009, right on the back of Chinese Democracy, and again that all fell through. Now there was a court case about that. The documents are publicly available. You can find them if you really know where to look. And the stadium tour was planned for summer 2009 in America. But according to the lawsuit between Axl and Irving Azoff, which was launched in May 2010, it was sabotaged. And apparently, according to what's said in some of the documents, is that Azoff allegedly wanted to split the old version of the band to reform the Slash Duff era of the group and to sell more tickets. As, in his opinion, maybe the Bumblefoot version of Guns N' Roses wasn't as big a draw as the Slash and Duff version. And there was lots of prep around that tour, but the tour never came to pass. So there was a lawsuit, which the terms of which was settled. I don't know what the terms of that were because they haven't been published, but it did happen, which means for me criticising Guns and going, February 2009, no tour, summer 2009, no tour. There were plans to tour, they didn't happen, and the lawsuit prevented Guns from touring in America until the lawsuit was resolved. So Guns first started playing shows in America properly in October 2011, 3 years after the release of Chinese Democracy, and the album was clearly dead in the water. By the time the band were back on the road, it was 4th of December 2009, opening with shows in Japan, Taipei and Korea. And they had a new lineup. They had a new guitarist. His name was DJ Ashba. And he joined the group in about mid-2009. And Appetite for Democracy, this live Blu-ray, DVD and CD, is the only recorded and released material by that version of the band, by the Appetite for Democracy, Chinese Democracy era touring version of the group at all. And that meant that there was an opportunity for the group to tour and to wrest back, the mantle from other people, and from Velvet Revolver, and it just didn't really happen. And part of that, I think, comes down to the fact that the touring was haphazard. It was late. The lineup had changed dramatically. Unless you actually went and bought tickets to see Guns N' Roses, you didn't know what Guns N' Roses sounded like live anymore. And this is where I have to talk a little bit about the changing lineup that we had. So Slash out, Duff out, Izzy wasn't in the band, Matt was out, Dizzy was left, Axl was left. So the singer and the keyboardist. And some people, they don't care who's in the band. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it's a duck, and that's what matters. That's what they care about, And as long as you kind of squint your eyes and you've had a couple of pints and they're playing Welcome to the Jungle and it sounds pretty good, then that's all that really matters. Then that's fine. But for other people, it really matters, because you kind of go, well, tickets for a show aren't cheap, especially not now. But even then, tickets to see Guns were like £30-40 at least. And so you kind of go, I really want them to be good. I want to hear them. I want to know how good they are before I go and see them. Because leaving your house and going and see a band, that's probably like £100 in terms of people time. So you think you've got to get to the gig, you've got to have a drink, have some food, maybe buy a t-shirt, pay for the car to be parked. Then you put the cost of the ticket on top of there, and you kind of go, well, that's £150 or something before the band even play a note. And I didn't like this era of the band. This lineup of the band was my least favourite of the Guns lineups that I've seen and that I've lived through. And I got to be really honest, it all comes down to DJ Ashba, actually. And this is where I'm going to get uncharacteristically bitchy. Is that, for me, DJ Ashba struck me as somebody that was playing music as a means to an end, more of an entrepreneur than a rock star, or a musician as such. Not denying the guy can't play, he absolutely can play, no problem about it. But I also, and this sounds very shallow, but you've got to remember, Oscar Wilde said it's only the shallow that don't judge by appearances, is that DJ, his appearance, his playing style, his methodology, his approach was very traditional rock, which I thought Guns had left in the dust 20 years previously. Yeah, that is a sniff. So getting, Buckethead in the band, Robin Fink in the band, Richard Fortus in the band, Bumblefoot in the band, Brain in the band, what you were looking at was instead creating a super group of master players from a wide and varied set of approaches, tastes and ideals. When I saw Guns in 2002 at the London Docklands Arena, which has now been demolished and turned into urban luxury flats, they were phenomenally good. It felt like I was watching this weird version of a rock band that beamed in from outer space, combining obscure but super talented guys and creating a futuristic vision of what a rock group could be. A band that weren't defined by hats, haircuts, tattoos, or girls. A band that instead was taking the concept of heavy, hard, obtuse metal and making it into something that was unique and brilliant and weird. And that was the version of Guns I really, really loved. And that's the version of Guns that ceased to exist. Because by the time DJ Ashba was in the band, I didn't like him as a player. I didn't like his style. He looked and acted like a standard cock rocker who had been transported in from 1986 from bands like Rat and Motley Crue. I know he was a former member of Nicky Six's band 6am, but had been transplanted in from 1986 as if time itself hadn't changed at all, as if there'd been no evolution. It's like suddenly if you were going to see Nirvana and then you had a guy that looked like he was in fucking Foghat or Clarence Creedwater Revival or something. It was there, and you kind of go, this guy's 20 years too late. He wants to be in the Guns of 1989, not the Guns of 2009. And it felt to me that DJ's abilities or his passion was not in playing the music, but it was in being successful, in being an entrepreneur, in furthering the existence of DJ Ashborough as a brand, and being in Guns N' Roses was a way of extending the value of that brand, as opposed to going, I'm playing guitar in Guns N' Roses, I'm going to rock the shit out of that job. It's more like, this is a stepping stone to something greater and something bigger, in the way that someone may cynically look at a set of careers and go, well, I'm going to be a rock guitarist in Guns N' Roses because that's a way to get a degree of financial security and profile and brand recognition. I prefer my guns weird. Not going to muck about. I prefer my Guns N' Roses weird. I'm not interested in dancing girls on stage. I'm not interested in guys with loads of tattoos and top hats looking like they're falling out of a Halloween costume competition to dress as a member of Guns N' Roses. Cosplaying 80s versions of rock is not interesting to me. That stuff was dead the moment that the last notes of Smells Like Teen Spirit faded away when you played Nevermind in 1991. And it dragged the band back and away from their potential to being a nostalgia act. You know, you've got a guy in a top hand, and some people, I know somebody that didn't know who DJ was, who when they saw them at the London Docklands Arena told me two things. Firstly, I'm never going to see them again. Secondly, that guy clearly thought he was fucking Slash or somebody, was the exact words that that person said to me. And I didn't like what happened at that point, because it felt to me, especially when you look at the set list, that the band were becoming less current and more a museum to their past former glories. There was a couple of other things that happened. So when the band started touring, 4th of December 2009, and they played, in 2010, they played 72 shows. So they played 3 in America, 2 of which were club shows, 9 in South America, 4 in Australia, 28 in Europe, and I think 13 in Canada. And of those shows, 3 of them were invite-only fashion shows. So they had 2 shows in New York to an invited-only audience of about 250 people, 1 in a club in Paris. And it felt to me that if you're a band that's that big and has that much attention and that much interest to play invite-only shows to the fashion industry, felt to me both exclusionary. It felt like a creation of unnecessary prestige, or not prestige, as the case might be. It also felt that, for me, one of the things that really, really matters to me about music is music should be accessible to everyone. Art should be accessible to everyone. I have strong opinions, as you probably noticed, about when art and the experience of art is excluded from people because of money, or because you don't know the right people, or because you don't work in the fashion industry. Some of the people that were at those shows had no fucking clue half of the songs that the band were playing. They were just like, I'm seeing Guns N' Roses in a club, woohoo! They couldn't have cared less. It could have been Bon Jovi, it could have been fucking Beyonce. They did not care who was playing. And that to me felt like it was a squandering of an opportunity. If you're going to play to 250 people, make sure those 250 people really bloody love your band. Because if you're playing to 250 people and 30 people really love your band, and 220 other people don't really care because they've got champagne, and bearing in mind, 10 years, 20 years before that, you were headlining stadiums. You know, less than 10 years before that, you were headlining Rio to 225,000 people. To play to an audience that's 1,000th of the size, and then to play to maybe 30 people, 1/10,000th of the size, who care about the band. It feels a little insulting as a fan to think, oh, because I don't know the intern at insert name of fashion house here, I can't get to see my favourite band play 10 blocks away from my house. It just seems a little wrong. And I've always hated those type of shows. You know, I understand there's a financial imperative occasionally for bands to play private shows. Bands that aren't as rich as Guns N' Roses, aren't as popular as Guns N' Roses, sometimes prop up a tour with a private show to subsidise the rest of the touring cycle so they can make enough money to continue. I understand that. I support that. It's when there's no opportunity for other people to go and see the band at that time. So, for example, playing New York, 2 club shows in New York in February 2010, and then not playing New York properly until over 18 months later at Madison Square Garden, feels to me that it's starting to lose touch with the people that have put you in the place where you are. Now, that sounds very much like gatekeeping. I hate that type of gatekeeping. That I liked them when they were hopelessly poor, they're awful now. But it's like, no, because the people that have bought the records, that have stayed loyal and faithful to the band, that have kept the faith, are not taken into account when shows like that happen. Feels to me quite disrespectful, as if going, well, actually, you don't really matter. It doesn't matter that you've liked the band for 30 years. It doesn't matter that you've supported us. It doesn't matter that you've travelled all over the world to see us. The fact is, you don't know the guy that's running the PR for a certain fashion house, and therefore, fuck you, you get to stay outside whilst people that don't give a shit about the band are inside. And that is quite, I think, it doesn't appeal to me, because I think art should be democratic and open to all and accessible to all, and that means I do think gig tickets should be cheaper. By the way, I really, really do. The other part of this is some of the other touring decisions that were made. 2011, by the way. So the band played 40 shows in 2011. They played 29 in America. They played 11 in South America. And of those 11 shows that they played in South America, one of them was released as a bootleg DVD, Guns N' Roses Live in Paradise City. Allegedly, the band playing in Rio de Janeiro on September 2011. October 2011. This was broadcast on television and on the internet. It is well known as, if you've ever seen that picture of Axl in a yellow rain jacket looking quite big with a massive hat and the line saying, "Welcome to the jungle, we got lots of cake," comes from this show, by the way. This is also the show where, in a moment of heroic ambition, Bumble, who's a fantastic guitarist and a lovely band, put on a Star Wars helmet and then couldn't see what he was doing. Completely understandable, human error, it happens all the time, but it didn't sound great and it didn't look great when it's your first show in a long period of time and it's broadcast on television. It's a good show, by the way. This version of Guns undoubtedly rocks. They play the songs, they execute them with passion. They're a great live act at this point, but they are a nostalgia act. As you look at the set list that we've got for there, and then out of the songs from Chinese Democracy, that is, the songs that are less than 20 years old, and we only have Chinese Democracy, Sorry, This I Love, Better, Street of Dreams. So that's 5 songs from the past 20 years. And when you're only playing 5 songs from the past 20 years and your other 16 songs are from the first 5 years of your career, you can't help but be a nostalgia act. It's just not, there's no valid interpretation of it to say that you are anything other than a museum to your former glories. And I saw Guns on this tour. I saw them in 2012. I saw them at Nottingham Arena, which was an experience, which I'll detail in a minute. But it felt to me that Guns had passed over the horizon of being a current band that you could be excited about. They became a touring museum, and that's when you start to look at the constituency of the set lists. Kraftwerk have done exactly the same thing in the past few years. They've become a museum to how good they were. In fact, they started doing that probably about 30 years ago. And 2012 saw the band playing a number of shows. So they played 70 shows in 2012, 29 in the US, 12 in Vegas, 9 in the UK, 20 in Europe, 3 in India, and 1 in Japan. And playing in Japan, it was to a 3,000 capacity crowd, which is, a little strange, but there you are. There were allegedly plans to release a remix LP in 2010. That didn't happen. There were plans to release the follow-up to Chinese Democracy in 2012. Apparently it was ready to release. Axl wanted to release it, but for some reason it didn't happen. And instead we had effectively Guns becoming a tribute band. There was a track called One Man Mutiny that was Tommy Stinson, Robin Fink and Dizzy Reed that was released in 2010. There was a track in 2011, the Pink Panther theme, which was all the members of Guns apart from Axl and Dizzy. that was released on his website. But what we didn't have, and I think where we started to see a difference between the various band members, is one of the band members wanted to have a HQ like Metallica and to make that a hive of industry where the band could release and record their own material, do it at their own way, be masters of their own destiny. Yes, it would take a little bit more effort, but it would have set the band up to operate in a manner very, very similar to Metallica as a self-contained entity that could release what it wanted, when it wanted, how it wanted, and to be a small and very successful business. That wasn't the case. Instead, Guns became a touring nostalgia act. As I've mentioned before, the Rio show in 2011, there's a couple of interesting things about this show, one of which is the band went on stage at 2:40 a.m, which means they finished about 4:45 a.m. And looking at the time in which that happened, which is October, that's 4:45 a.m. as an end time for a show is ridiculous. I've been at gigs in places like Barcelona, for example, where the last band finishes about 3 a.m. primarily because of the heat, and you can't do anything before there's a period where they have the siesta. The sun is at its highest, which is around about midday, and even at an all-day festival, the first band is on at like 7 p.m. And then the last one finishes about 3 a.m. I've been there. I understand that because that's the climate that people live in. But looking at it objectively, coming on stage at 2:40 a.m. is ridiculous and selfish. Guns were still at the point in this time in their career, and all the way through to 2014, the last shows of this particular lineup, Guns were a band that came on late, finished late, paid a lot in excess fines, and often really, really annoyed people to the extent that they'll never see them again. For this show, it was plagued by bad weather. So it was raining constantly. The mixing desk stopped working. The stage was extremely slippery. There were lots of technical problems, but that wasn't quite the answer. It was a confluence of other factors, not helped by the fact that the band came on very, very late. In 2012, the band announced what they called up close and personal, intimate shows, trying to sell intimate shows as a sales point, a chance to see this amazing band in a small room. What they were actually dealing with is they were trying to reframe a lack of demand, reduce demand. As an example, if you haven't released a studio album in 20 years, or you've only released one studio album in 20 years, you haven't released any singles, you haven't done any television, you haven't done any radio, the only television you've done is TV broadcasts of live shows, to say that you've gone from, say, 20 years previously playing to 80,000 people, to then go, well, we're doing up close and personal shows to 2,000 people, and you're kind of going, well, that's because if you put a stadium on sale, people wouldn't go, especially not if they thought you were going to finish at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. in the morning. So you try and turn your appeal becoming more selective, as Spinal Tap would have it, into something where you try and sell it as a benefit to experience an intimate, up-close and personal show with the band, as opposed to going, we're not as popular as we once were. The band also started to change their set list around a little bit, not a huge amount, but as we'll see from the Appetite for Destruction Blu-ray here, is that it says, and that's where it says here, look at that, it says it features 8 first ever concert film performances, including, and at the bottom, a song called Objectify. Now, Objectify is not on any Guns N' Roses album, it's not on any Guns N' Roses single, it's a solo track by Bumblefoot, from a Bumblefoot album. To say that it's an 8 first, use it as a selling point on your live DVD that there's a solo track being sung by one of your guitarists, which hasn't been on any Guns N' Roses album, you kind of go, that's a bit of a reach. You're reaching quite a lot there, aren't you? And then also to say it's Guns N' Roses' first live concert film since 1992 is probably more accurately, once you take the spin away from it, a statement of just how unproductive the band have been. When you look at the career of another band, Metallica, that released albums in 1991, pretty much the same week or stroke month as Use Your Illusion, Followed that up with Load in 96, Reload in 97, Garage Incorporated in 98, S&M in 99, Saint Anger in 2003. That's like 5 or 6 albums while Guns N' Roses were sitting around not releasing anything. And then Death Magnetic came out just before Chinese Democracy came out and effectively stole Chinese Democracy's thunder because what Metallica did, Guns didn't. Metallica went on television, they did interviews, they announced live shows, they went into arenas, they toured, they did the work. Guns, for some reason, couldn't make that landing. They couldn't stick it, they couldn't get takeoff. And so we had another concert film, which was not released on physical form. So I could show you this, but that'd be a fib really, which was shot at the London O2 Arena on the 29th of May 2012. It features Izzy as guest guitarist on 14 Years, You Could Be Mine, Dead Flowers, Knocking on Heaven's Door, Night Train and Paradise City. It featured, we also had in July 21st, 2012, the band played Saint-Tropez in France. They played a Russian wedding for an oligarch. I think it was an oligarch. And they played an 18-song set. Now, remember I was talking in 2010 about the band playing a New York fashion show. You're then playing an oligarch's wedding in 2012. I end up kind of thinking, are you doing this because you want to communicate to people and you want to play to people, or are you doing it because some guy waved an enormous amount of money at you? And you can bet of the people that are at the wedding, maybe 50 of them are going, well, they played Sweet Child of Mine in Paradise City, they're very good. And, the other 150 of them are going, what the hell's this Shackler's Revenge shit? Play Patience, man. And we had another couple of instances of that. 2013 had apparently a private show at a house for Tommy Hilfiger on the 13th of February 2013. And you end up kind of going, who are you doing this for? What circles are you moving in? Have you forgotten the world that you came from? And you ended up doing basically shows and requests for incredibly rich people. Basically a party band for billionaires who happen to just accidentally play to other people. And is that the kind of band that when you were 17, you were like, when I get to be older, I get to play to millionaires' weddings? And I'm like, it's not the band I would have been in. But it sounds like I'm being harsh on Guns. I absolutely am, because I hold the bands that I like to a higher standard than any other band. I couldn't give a flying fig if Ed Sheeran or Harry Styles or somebody plays a wedding to a Russian oligarch, because I don't care. I don't like them. I couldn't care if they were playing in my local park, apart from the fact that it was incredibly loud and people would probably be throwing beer cans into my garden. I would not give two hoots about it because I don't regard their music doesn't connect to me. It doesn't mean anything to me. It's the same as if someone said, "Yeah, the Rednecks are playing Cotton Eye Joe at the local pub." I'm like, who cares? It doesn't bother me. Whereas someone like Guns plays private shows for fashion houses or Russian oligarchs' weddings, and I kind of go, you're very rich, Axel. You don't need to do this. And effectively what you're doing is excluding people that actually like the band from the opportunity to see the band, because you'd rather play to people that don't care about your band. Now, I saw them in 2012. The last time I saw Guns, I saw them at the Nottingham Arena. I think it was about the 15th of May 2012. And I went with my brother, who you've seen on previous episodes. Because Guns were notorious for coming on late, it was actually cheaper for me to go and get a hotel in Nottingham on a Saturday night than it would be to pay for a cab back after the O2 Arena show on a Tuesday night. And also, knowing how big Nottingham is, it's about 1 million people. You can walk from one end of Nottingham city centre to the other in about 20 minutes. It's pretty small. So we knew no matter where in Nottingham city centre the hotel was, it was going to be near enough to walk to, and we'd have a hotel and we'd just be able to get up. So we went to see Guns at Nottingham Arena. They came on at 11:15. They finished at about 2 a.m. So yeah, 2.75 hours. A good show. Fantastic show. When the band were on, enjoyed it immensely. Before the band came on, didn't enjoy it, because Guns are always late, or were always late at this point in time. So I'm there, Thin Lizzy, or whatever's left of Thin Lizzy, is playing. And I'm kind of looking around, and it's like 10:15, and I'm kind of going, yeah, they're going to be late, aren't they? Um, and I kind of wandered about 10:45. I decided I was just going to ask, well, look, what time's the curfew? And the guy said, well, technically 15 minutes, but it's probably not going to happen like that. And, I ended up kind of thinking, is this band actually going to play the show or not? And I didn't know. I mean, I figured they did, and they did. But there were lots of people that were very annoyed. There were people that left before the band came on. There were people that wanted refunds because the band weren't on stage. The air in the arena was not vicious, but it was angry. It was like, you're wasting my fucking time, and time is precious, especially if you work 5 days a week. You go out on Saturday night, go and see Guns N' Roses, and you expect them, like every other bloody band that plays Nottingham Arena, they're on about 8:45. They finish about 11 o'clock. You get home, the babysitter's fine, the kids are still up or they've just been put to bed. But if you go and see Guns, you have to go and text the babysitter and go, can you stay until 1, 2 o'clock? Not quite sure what time the band are going to finish. You suddenly go, that's maybe an extra 30, 60 quid. And then you kind of go, oh, I can't drink because then I've got to drive the babysitter back because you can't get a cab because it's 2 a.m. in the morning. Or you kind of cut your losses and you go and you want a refund. And so when I saw Guns playing there, and it's really disrespectful to fans to treat them like that, as if they're going to just hang around forever and wait for you. Because remember, not everybody, especially not on a Wednesday night, is going to be willing to stay up until 2 a.m. to watch a band, because some people, their bedtime's 10 o'clock. My bedtime's 2 a.m. because I'm weird. But some people, their bedtime is 10 o'clock at night. They get up at 5, and you're kind of going, imagine if someone said to me, well, actually, the band are going to come on at 4 in the morning and they're going to finish at 7, and you have to be at work at 9. And I'd be like, oh, no. I can't work on that. It's like, yeah, you've got an American band, but they're operating in an American time zone, but they just happen to be in Nottingham. Imagine, we're watching Guns N' Roses play in an arena in Nottingham, which is about 11,000 people. They're playing Paradise City. It's about 10 to 2 in the morning. I'm looking around and going, this arena is 11,000 people. And I'm kind of looking at the size of the crowd. It's extremely spacious. There are probably 300 to 400 people there when the band are playing Paradise City at 2 a.m. And I'm kind of going, surely they're not blind. They're seeing this, right? They know this is happening. The overtime fines are maybe £1,000 a minute, which means if it was meant to finish at 11 and it's now 2 o'clock, you might have spent £180,000 in overtime fines for the venue. And you end up going, so you're playing to 10,000 people. Tickets are about 40 quid. You're not getting all of that 40 quid. So you're not getting £400,000 a night. And you end up going, you're spending half of that on your overtime fees, which you could pocket all of the money if you turned up sooner. Now, there's a theory that a band member in Guns may have pathological demand avoidance syndrome, which is the theory that you tell somebody to do something, they won't do it. Even if it's the best thing in the world for them and it's a good idea, they will not do it to prove to you that they have agency and control and power over themselves. And I say, you basically a living embodiment of fuck you, I would do, you tell me. And then that comes at the consequences of for example, being terrible for jobs, or having to pay huge overtime fines, poverty, penury, whatever else you want to describe it. But it's around, as an act of oppositional defiance, lacking in logic, but purely through strength of will and determination to prove to the rest of the world that they have the control, that they do not do as you tell them to or as you ask them to. Even if you say to somebody, don't punch yourself in the face, they will punch themselves in the face to prove to you that you don't get to tell them what to do. They get to make the decisions. And I think maybe that's how the band's career ran at that point, was we will only ever do what we want to do. Now, there's a quote, which is, people say I only ever do what I want to do. And actually, that's not true, because the flip side of that is I never did what I didn't want to do. But realistically, you're dancing on the edge of a pin when you're talking about it like that. I'm watching Guns N' Roses at Nottingham Arena, 10 to 2 in the morning on a Saturday night. They're playing to 300 people in an 11,000 seater arena. Maybe 2.5% of all the tickets sold are still sticking it out. And you end up kind of thinking, I'm not sure this is a sustainable approach. And that's why the person that I worked with said that they would never see Guns N' Roses again, because the guy looked like Slash and he came on at midnight. No matter how good the band are, if everyone's tired and have gone to bed by the time you're playing your greatest hits at the end of the show, you might as well have not played them. And then the last half of 2012 came the Vegas residency. They announced Appetite for Democracy at the Hard Rock Hotel in Las Vegas, which is where this DVD and live album Appetite for Democracy comes from. It's available as a DVD and CD set, or just a DVD set in a Blu-ray case, just to make things nice and easy for you. This is the only Guns N' Roses, or most recent Guns N' Roses live release, the only Guns N' Roses live release that has been issued that was recorded after 1993. It's a great shame, actually, because this version of the band are very, very good indeed. And this is a really good DVD. But after that show in Nottingham, I decided, no, I'm never seeing Guns again, unless they're playing somewhere I can walk back from, and they're free, because I've been burnt too many times. Realistically, Appetite for Democracy should have had, in my opinion, a more widespread release than two CDs there, live at the Hard Rock Casino, Las Vegas, and a DVD. It should have been a standalone double CD, should have been a triple LP or a quadruple LP, and it should have been Guns N' Roses live. And so even if you're a doubter or a skeptic about Guns, you get a chance to see them. You get to see them on your television for about £8, £10 or something. You get to hear them. You can watch it on streaming. You can access it and go, wow, they're amazing live. Even though I haven't seen them, or I said I'd never see them again, they're amazing live. A great live album is a fantastic advert for concert tickets, because people that are on the fence or not sure about seeing your band will see you live. And as Henry Rollins said, live is the only way to be sure. It's the only way to know. And so if you don't do that, and if you don't respect your audience and your fan base, you end up in a situation where people aren't going to go and spend the money because they don't know if your band's any good live. And the Guns I've seen that is live, absolutely fantastic at it. Really brilliant. Problem is, 95% of the audience had gone home and gone to bed by the time that they were demonstrating to people how good and amazing they were. But Appetite for Democracy was a great release. But again, unless you looked at the music DVD section or you went for the slightly more deluxe box set version, you weren't going to get it. Now, I didn't buy this brand new. I bought this from CEX for £8 because I thought £30 for this was too much money, and it's still too much money. Of course, you could get this version, which is considerably cheaper, or you could just watch it on YouTube. It's inevitably on YouTube these days anyway. But it's, I think, Appetite for Democracy is a really great live release, and live recordings from that period are really great. There is, as I've said, there's a couple of songs there that are sung by other people that aren't Axl. One's Motivation by Tommy Stinson, and the other one is Objectify by Bumblefoot. Both very good, by the way, but they're not really Guns N' Roses songs. Motivation, by the way, can be found on the Tommy Stinson album Village Gorilla Head, his first solo record, I think, from 2004. It's the penultimate track on there, and it's very good. As you can tell from the shrink wrap, I bought it for £1 from a charity shop. I've never actually listened to it. Objectify is from one of Bumblefoot's many, many albums. He's a very, very talented man and a very nice guy. And I think the last I heard, I think he was singing in Asia, which surely you've got to be pretty good to be able to do that. 2013, the Vegas residency is done. The band have done their 12 shows in Vegas. They played 22 shows in 2013, 10 in America, 6 in Australia, 3 in Canada, 1 in the United Arab Emirates, 1 in Malaysia, and 1, I think, and let me just quickly check, Lebanon, I think. 2014, the cracks start to appear. The band played 24 shows, 13 in the US, 10 reprising Appetite for Democracy in Vegas, 3 elsewhere, 10 in South America. And for the first time in a long time, Tommy Stinson does not play with guns. Duff, who met Axl walking down a corridor or at the same hotel, where they're playing in the same hotel, staying in rooms next to each other in 2010. Duff came on stage and guested for a few songs at the O2 Arena in 2010. And when Tommy wasn't able to play the shows, Duff stepped in and played the shows whilst Tommy wasn't able to. March 2014, the 3D movie Appetite for Democracy and the 2 CD set was announced. The Las Vegas residency was the last shows by this version of Guns. On April the 6th in Buenos Aires, Duff rejoined, plays his first full show with Guns, deputising for Tommy, and then plays some shows up to May the 31st. The reason being is that Tommy was playing on the Replacements reunion tour, and also Tommy's life circumstances had changed. When you join a band, your life is normally a configuration or a way that works that allows you to tour and play live a lot. For whatever reason, health, divorce, childcare responsibilities, finances, life changes. You know, there was a time 23 years ago, 22 years ago, I loved being in a band. If someone said to me, you can be in that band now, make the same amount of money as you made then, inflation adjusted, play at the same size crowds, I'd be like, nah, no, I'm not doing that. My life's changed, you know, I've become a parent. There's significant health issues in this household. I can't just go and, you know, be away 100 nights a year or something. Even if I was headlining stadiums, I'd be like, could we do 20? I reckon I could do 20, you know. I used to tour a lot. I used to travel a lot for work. I used to be away from home 100, 150 nights a year. I could do it then. I can't do it now because my life has changed and the circumstances around my life have changed, and I can't be absent from home. It's selfish for me to do so. So, for reasons that probably are broadly very similar to that, Tommy effectively said, I can't be a member of Guns anymore, you know. And whilst rock is very important, and rock is often our family that we choose, the family that we do have, and the commitments that we do have outside of that, sometimes make it impossible to continue to be a member of a certain band. Tommy left, and the band played the last show with Tommy, DJ, Bumble, the last Las Vegas residency from May the 21st to June the 7th, 2014. And that was effectively the end of the Chinese democracy era of the band. And as far as I'm concerned, I think the band split at that point. They just didn't tell anybody. Is that the band ended in June 2014. And whilst members were quite vague about it, in summer 2015, DJ officially left the group. Bumblefoot did say that he'd left the group. Tommy left the band, and there were rumours, lots of rumours about what was going to happen next. And that is the next episode where I talk about Guns. Ultimately, Appetite for Democracy, this live release is very, very good. It shows a really cohesive, exciting, interesting version of the band, but the band are, and you can see it happening during the course of the DVD, the band are becoming a nostalgia act, a tribute act to their own brilliance. The newer songs are starting to fade out of the set. The older songs they're playing more and more of the older songs. The venues are getting smaller. There's hardly anybody left from the early years. It's a classic example of, I think, potentially wasting opportunities. Guns could have stayed at stadium level if they'd released singles, if they'd done television, if they'd done radio, if they'd toured more often, more reliably, if they'd turned up on time. If is the middle word of life. And what we have with the way that guns worked until 2014 was, as the t-shirt said, freedom through musical integrity. But the flip side of that is that the band followed their own muse to the detriment of everything else, including the music. They started to play quite public private shows. They started to appear not to care too much about the audience, about the life commitments that the audience members had, to not play at regular times, to not release new material, to not play the game as such. And you ended up with a band that realistically only existed on stage for short periods of time. There wasn't a photograph of all the members of Guns. There was never a moment where every member of Guns in 2012 was said, just stand against a wall for 5 minutes and get a guy to take some photos of you, and then those will be the new press photos. So when somebody put up a news article that said, Guns are playing, and then there's a photograph of the new lineup of Guns, which means you don't get the headline. You don't get the web page splash. You don't get the tweet that shows Guns N' Roses are touring. You get a photograph of a logo or an image of a logo. You don't get a photo of the band, and then it's really difficult because people are going, why aren't they showing the faces of the geezers in the band? Do they look awful? Do they look like, like when a band reforms and they're all fat and bald? Now, I'm on thin ground when I say that, but when a band reforms and they're all fat and bald, and you kind of go, yeah, not the same band, is it? The only thing that stayed the same is the band's name. This is where, if Guns had done things a little differently, if they'd been perhaps a little bit more compliant to the expectations of the audience, that they could still have been a massive band at this point without having to press the Slash and Duff reunion button, which is the next episode. So, Appetite for Democracy, it feels like I've been a little harsh on them. Undoubtedly I have, but it comes from a place of love, because I love Guns. This period of Guns, I absolutely thought, apart from DJ Asper, I thought this version of the band was phenomenally good. They had so much potential, with both the incredible material that Sunshine's Democracy and the promise of what they could have done next, but they didn't deliver, and that is such a shame. It really, really is. But we have the live DVD. So that brings that to a close. Thank you for watching. I think if you made it all the way to the end, that's brilliant. Have a biscuit, or maybe some toast, or an ice lolly. Treat yourself. You've earned it. If you haven't made it to the end, doesn't matter what I say, you're going to do it anyway. If you've liked it, brilliant. Please do subscribe. If you haven't, don't. It's a free world, baby. Do what you want to do. Stay beautiful, and I'll see you all again some other time. All right, bye.